Whoa. Oh, hey, it's Jen from Sew and Tell Patterns. I thought I would stitch up the Bellion pattern today. You want to come hang out? Let's go. Let's start with our pocket, and we have two of these. We are going to fold them in half and stitch an inch down. I went ahead and sewed our pocket. We have our seam, and then I went ahead and pressed it open. While you're there at the iron, we are going to press all of our seams back. First, we're going to start with a ½ inch at the top, and then we're going to fold it down another inch, and then we'll be top stitching this eventually. But then I already went ahead and folded back the rest of my seams a ½ inch so that we can attach our pocket. I went ahead and did my top stitching along the top of the pocket. Now we're going to place them onto our side front pieces. So I went ahead, I have my cut pattern piece here. And as you notice, there's going to be notches on the pattern piece. What I like to do, because I'm a little lazy, I like to just put pins into my garments to mark it instead of any kind of chalk or anything. So how I do that, I take some pins and I kind of lift this up and hold it in place and place my pin in. And then I do that all the way around. Then on the other side, I just use my pins to mark on the second side. Now you can hop on over to your machine and you can place your pockets on and stitch them on. I attached the pockets, as you can see, and now we're going to sew up the center front seam. So I'm going to lay my pieces together and I'm going to sew up the seam. Okay, so we stitched up our center front seam and gave it a nice press as well. Now we're going to toss this to the side and we are going to pick up our front yoke pieces. You should have cut 4. There's going to be 2 that are going to be our self-facing and then 2 that are going to be our facing pieces. So let's notice that there's a little notch here. We want to make sure that we cut those. And working with 2 at a time, we are going to stitch from the notch down. We're going to do that on both pieces. We stitched here, and now we're going to open up these pieces. And we're going to grab our back yoke piece. Again, you should have cut 2 of these. And again, working with 1 at a time, we're going to place them on top. And we are going to stitch the shoulder seams. Okay, we connected our yoke pieces at the shoulder seams. Now we're going to connect these 2 together. I'm going to lay one on top of the other with right sides together, and then we're going to stitch around the neckline. Once we do that, then we're going to clip into the neckline or trim the neckline so that it turns easier. Went ahead and stitched around my neckline. I also added some understitching, and this just helps keep the facing turning backwards. I also added a label in the back just to remind myself what is the inside and what's the self outside. Let's flip this inside out and look at it this way. And if you notice, these are going to be these front lapel pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold down our seam allowance and we're going to stitch from the top down to where the notch is. And so when we do that, we're gonna kind of have this like quad sandwich happening seam right here. So we're gonna stitch from here to the notch, and then we're gonna come over and do it the same thing on the other side. So from down here to the notch. So we went ahead and stitched up these two collar pieces. And as you can see, this kind of all four kind of meet together. So we're gonna turn this inside out. I've got my trusty little tool. These are just the tweezers I use for my serger, but you could really use anything sharp. So I'm gonna kind of push this through and then use my tweezers to push this out. If you're using a thicker fabric, you might find that you want to trim this piece back. But if it's a thin enough fabric, you may be fine without trimming. Okay, and we now have our entire yoke piece here. We can get it facing the right direction. Okay, let's give this a nice good press. Okay, we have our yoke pieces right here. I went ahead and gave them a good press. I turned back the collar a little bit and gave that a press as well. Or you could just leave them open. It creates like a V shape when you wear it. Now we're gonna pick up the long lost front piece and we are going to be adding it to our yoke. The way we're gonna be doing this is using a flat felled seam, and we'll get started with that. First, we are going to match these right sides together along the bottom of the yoke and the top of the side front pieces. And we're going to be stitching at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, I went ahead and attached my yoke to my front pieces. And now we're going to be trimming just the 2 layers of yoke pieces back within the seam allowance. Usually you want to get about 1/8 of an inch to your seam. So as you can see, I cut this back. Now we're going to fold this over, give it a press, and then we're going to turn it up once more and we're going to do a top stitch along here. We went ahead and did our flat filled seam here. Here's the front side. And just so you can see the back, we have it tucked under and then top stitched along. Now we're going to attach the back exactly the same way. So I have my back here. You notice on the back pattern piece, there are 2 notches at the top. This is for a small little pleat. So we stitched our pleat, we opened it up, and we pressed our pleat open. So I'm going to attach this in the same way by placing my back to my yoke and stitching across. Next, I went ahead and matched both my side seams and stitched along my side seams. I also added some serging to finish off my seams, but you could use pinking shears or a simple zigzag stitch to finish off your seams. Let's get into making our short sleeve band. You should have cut 4 of these, and we're going to fold them in half, one at a time, and stitch along the short ends on all 4. So I went ahead and stitched up all 4 of my sleeve pieces. Now I'm going to take 2 of them and I'm going to match them along this bottom hem area. So I'm going to put right sides together and match them at the seam, and then I'm going to be stitching all the way around, and I'm going to do the same for the second set. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my sleeves, and if you'll notice, I did some understitching, creating the second or the back side as a facing for my sleeve. I just think, again, it helps this stay turned once you wash and wear this. So now that we have our 2 sleeves, we are going to attach them to our bodice. We are going to put them right sides together and matching just the top layer of your sleeve to the side seam and the under seam of the sleeve together. We'll wrap it around the sleeve. If I can get it. And we are going to stitch all the way around this sleeve, just through the main layer of the sleeve fabric, not the facing. Once we do that, then we're going to hop on over to the iron, and we will turn everything inside of the sleeve, and we'll be doing just a little hem press for that. Just want to show you guys the inside. So we've pressed all of this inside of the sleeve, and then I have turned back the facing. So basically what we are going to do is turn this back, and then we are going to top stitch along the entire sleeve and adhere this piece to it. I already did it on the other sleeve, so you can see. So we top stitched along here, and it enclosed this seam inside. All that is left is to hem our dress. So I prefer to do a rolled hem. I am going to do this all in one step using a rolled hem foot, but if you're going to do this by hand, you're just going to turn up your hem by 1/4 of an inch. You're going to stitch around as close to the edge as possible. Then you'll take some scissors and clip away the excess, and then you're going to turn it up again, and you're going to stitch right along the same line that you stitched the first time. Here we go, guys. Here is our rolled hem finish, and she is all done.